As much as we love to credit Alone in the Dark and Clock Tower, horror games have been around way before that. Now mind you, I take nothing away from the previously mentioned titles. If anything, the PS1 version of Clock Tower helped launch the genre to the level that it is today. I just wanted to mention this because I've been guilty of crediting Alone in the Dark as one of the first. But consider this a friendly reminder that horror games were around way before then. Now, this has to be one of the toughest lists I've made yet. There's no winning on this one. I have a feeling this one's going to be a little controversial. First off, as always, how about some criteria? For this list and this list alone, I'm considering anything from old school arcades to the Nintendo 64 as retro. I'm not counting PlayStation 1 games on this list, even though it was around the same time as the N64. Just my personal choice for my personal list. So, without any further ado, here is a special, not 5, but 15 freakiest retro games. Number 15, Earthbound, Gygas Encounter. From the very beginning of Earthbound, there's something that just feels off. If you were a patient enough player to make it to the final boss, Gygas, then you knew you were right with your original gut feeling all along. Especially when you found out that the character basically represents an aborted fetus. Yeah. Number 14, Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the Atari. It's real easy to forget for my generation and the generations younger than mine that there was a whole wave of Atari games based on horror movies before our time. On this list, I wanted to feature both Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Both games are similar enough, but opposite ends of the spectrum at the same time. Because in Halloween, you play as a possible victim, whereas in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you get to play as Leatherface. The games may not seem that creepy now, but if I put myself in a pair of 1970s loafers, then I can see how this was at one time. I'm sure some of you will feel the same way when I feature an NES game on this list. Speaking of which, number 13, Nightmare on Elm Street, NES. This entry was yet another horror movie title, this time on the original Nintendo Entertainment System. A fun feature of this game is that you could actually play with 4 players, when NES games were normally designed for 2 at the most. Anyone who was kept up at night as a kid because of Freddy Krueger, then you know where I'm coming from with this entry. Number 12. Number 11, Night Trap, Sega CD. This game is just weird. I don't know any other way to describe it. While not playing it as a kid, I definitely heard about this horror game at the time. The Sega CD was known for being one of the first consoles to feature full motion video. And when I say full motion video, I use that term lightly. Night Trap utilized this technology so players felt as if they controlled the camera system to this house during a slumber party. Throughout the game, the girls of said slumber party are being stalked by these weird-looking gimp freaks. Not only did you have control of the camera system, but the house defense systems, or traps if you will, as well. It's a very bizarre game, but I suggest you at least play it once. Number 10, Sweet Home and Maniac Mansion, NES. I'm putting both of these as one entry because of their similarities, but don't let the haunted house settings fool you. They are both fun yet freaky games in their own right. Here's a little creepy fun fact. Some of you may know it, some of you may not. Sweet Home was actually a precursor to the future horror series Resident Evil. Number 9, Shadow Man, Nintendo 64. I remember playing this as a kid and being hooked almost immediately. It blew my mind. You have a kick-ass voodoo shaman and Jack the Ripper in a Nintendo 64 game? Yes, please, sign me up! Number 8, Shadow of the Beast, Amiga. I always used to get this and Altered Beast confused. Understandably so, I'd say. This bizarre title was ported to several systems. I remember playing it on the SNES and it creeping me out. I recently played the original Amiga version, and to this day I can say that this game still holds up as disturbing. Number 7, Another World, or Out of This World, SNES. It doesn't matter which regional version of the game you played, both were creepy. This title actually played out a lot like the original Prince of Persia games, if you're familiar with them. Not just that, but at the time, no one had seen graphics quite like what was featured in Another World. It made the game feel somewhat alien, which is pretty apropos considering the title. Number 6, Nightmare Creatures, Nintendo 64. The title of the game really says it all. It's a game about, well, nightmare creatures. And yes, I'm also aware that this game and Shadow Man were both available on the original PlayStation. So I know some of you are asking, so why not include PS1 games? Easy answer, there's enough original creepy PlayStation games for its own list. Number 5, Friday the 13th, NES. This game was one of the many contributing factors to my ruined childhood. I've already made an entire creepy gaming episode on it, so if you want to hear me go more in depth about it, then be sure to check it out. Unlike Nightmare on Elm Street, a previous entry on this list, this game brought jump scares, even for back then. Number 4, Splatterhouse Trilogy, TurboGrafx 16 and Sega Genesis. Okay, so what's more kick-ass than a retro game where you're being chased down by a hockey mask-wearing killer? How about a game where you are the hockey mask-wearing killer? That's right! The Splatterhouse series had you playing the role of Resurrected Rick, a badass on a mission to save his girl from some ghouls. Number 3, Phantasmagoria PC. This title was a point-and-click game much in the same vein as Night Trap, but I'd say a little more extreme. See for yourself.
Please don't do this! Please don't do this!
Yeah, I think that speaks for itself. Number 2, Chiller, arcade and eventually NES. This little-known cult favorite is quite disturbing. This old-school shooter, which used the zapper for the NES, featured scenarios where you shot tortured people. This game is unsettling. Some of the NPCs could fight back, but for the most part, it's just a horror show. Other than the graphic pixelated gore, the freakiest aspect of this game was the haunting screams of your victims. I even remember there being an urban legend at the time that the screams used in the game were allegedly that of real victims. Crazy, right? It was almost like some freaky dark web game, but retro. This crazy-ass game would have made number 1 on the list, but due to the unlicensed port and the panic they caused, few people got the chance to play this disturbing cult classic. Now this is where I usually do honorable mentions, but since this list is already going on so long, I have one special mention, and that is the Castlevania series. While maybe not creepy or in-your-face scary, I still wanted to pay a little tribute to the series itself. That being said, It's time for number 1. Doom. All the consoles. Ah yes, Doom. There's nothing quite like it. Okay, fine, Wolfenstein. But Wolfenstein 3D didn't feature any demons or hellspawn, okay? Like I said with my previous entry, Chiller would have been featured higher, but not that many people knew about it. Everybody knew about Doom. There was so much buzz around this game, and rightfully so. Between the in-your-face pixelated gore, fighting hellspawn, and the kick-ass face-melting score, Doom tops this list. It was fast-paced, unforgiving, and utterly creepy to people who hadn't ever played a 3D first-person shooter. So here's your chance. I have a feeling I'm going to hear a lot of feedback on this one, and that's okay. So what did I miss? What other retro games of this era should have been on the list? Let me know. I really do like reading the discussion, so don't be shy. You sure won't hurt my feelings at this point. Thank you all so much for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed. I am Mullet Mike with Paddle and Full Screen saying keep stay creepy. Thank you all for watching. Peace.